Good evening and welcome to the Literature and Author Culture Conversation. We're very excited to have you here this evening to join us. Our virtual discussion this evening is part of a long series which was made possible in part thanks to the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, New England Foundation for the Arts, USDA Rural Development, and people like you. You too can support programs like this by making a tax-deductible donation to the Tamaqua Museum. The link is in the chat box. Take a quick moment to remind you as we get started to make sure you're on mute, but please engage with us by using the chat box to type in your questions and we'll add them into the conversation. We will have time to take additional live questions and comments at the end of the author conversation. Use your reaction buttons to let us see your enthusiasm. And if you're having any technical trouble, feel free to private message the Tamaqua Tech. Before we begin, I just want to take a minute to introduce myself and do a land acknowledgement in my language. Askwikwasin, Natasuis Makasni Pashao at Nahai Gansek, Natasuis Loren Spears at English at Ni Nahai Gansek Nehantek, Kanupiam Wuchi Ni Tampawag Ka Ni Tanksawag at Aki at Nahai Gansek, Katabatash Katantua Wuchi Wami Nawia Nakan Wuni Tiawank. Well, welcome this evening. Hello, if you don't know me already, I'm Loren Spears, the Executive Director of Tamaqua Museum. My traditional name is Makasni Pashao. I am Narragansett Niantic and an enrolled citizen of the Narragansett Nation, and welcome to the homelands of the Narragansett people. And thank you to the Creator for all the beauty that surrounds us on this lovely day. As I welcome you and bless this day, I must acknowledge the 400 years of conquest, colonization, genocide, land dispossession, enslavement, forced assimilation, detribalization, and erasure of the Narragansett and other Indigenous nations of the Americas. I also must acknowledge the bravery, resilience, perseverance, and adaptability of our ancestors who ensured our continuation, passing forth our traditional ecological knowledge, language, history, and culture while contributing to the creation of this colony, state, and country. There is no U.S. history without Indigenous peoples' history, and there's no Rhode Island history without Narragansett, Niantic, and other Indigenous peoples' history. This is our homeland since time immemorial. We are still here. May we always remember we are the land. What we do to the land, we do to ourselves. We must care for Mother Earth to ensure our future generations. A land acknowledgement is just the beginning and must be followed by actions. That is why we established the Indigenous Empowerment Network and represent museum exhibits and programs from a first-person perspective and make partnerships like the one we're going to discuss this evening. Katabatash Akwane Kanunantam. Thanks, peace, and blessings. For those that have not used the tools before, there are tools that I will pop in the chat. It's a lovely map called nativeland.ca, which is a good tool. And then there's also our guide to land acknowledgements, which for some reason I don't see our link, but I'll get it for you a little later. I now would like to introduce Rashaa Al-Sasah. I think I totally killed that. Sorry about that. I was trying so hard. And Amber Bliss of West Warwick Public Library. This past summer, West Warwick Public Library held an Indigenous Voices Anthology publishing project. Indigenous youth aged 15 to 25 were encouraged to apply for a paid fellowship opportunity that included 16 weeks of intensive workshops taught by authors and industry professionals. All the guest authors were published Indigenous writers, such as Stephen Graham Jones, Dawn Quigley, Brian Young, and others. The library staff showed participants step-by-step instructions on how to write, edit, and polish their pieces to professional standards and pursue the publication process. In addition, the fellows learned how to teach a workshop to the public about writing. The fellowship culminated in the publishing of an anthology of fellows' work, Voices of the Warp and Weft, available from all major publishing retailers for purchase and borrowing at the Rhode Island Public Library System. Please join me in welcoming today's guests, Rashaa and Amber. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Loren. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
looking forward to sharing the stories of this book, which has already been very well received. And I'm wondering if we can start with some background on how this project came into being.
Yeah, so that, like many things, started with a conversation. And I had actually worked, and I had actually reached out to you and Silver Moon a few summers ago about indigenizing our collection here at the West Warwick Public Library in the Youth Department. And so that was work that I had been doing and trying to update our collection with accurate and respectable and materials that were written by Indigenous people. And so I had found that to be more of a struggle than I had hoped it would be. So due to that, I was having a conversation with one of my fellow librarians over at the Cranston Public Library, Alyssa Taft, who is the teen librarian there. And previously, Amber and I had done a publishing project with teens the summer before and had done the same sort of thing where we had taken them step by step through the publishing process. And in my conversation with Alyssa, saying how dismayed I was at not being able to replace all of these books that I had discarded that were, not up to par, so to speak. And she said, well, why don't you just publish something just like you did before? And I was like, why didn't we think of that? So that was really how this project came to be. And I talked to Amber, who is our editor extraordinaire on these projects, and she was all for it. And so that's how this project came to be, just conversation and an idea.
It's amazing what a conversation will do in sparking creativity and innovation. And so this is really exciting. I'm wondering if you might go into the process of the program itself and how it worked out with the youth.
Yeah, so we followed a similar model to the first one. We made some adjustments because the funding we received this time was much more, which allowed us to do more with it. We were able to get more guests. We were able to pay all of the participants both a monthly stipend and professional rate for their work. And we had a slightly longer time period, which allowed us to accomplish a bit more. So the basic structure of the program, it's kind of broken into 4 acts. In the first act, the students, they all apply online. They have an online application, and they have to submit a writing sample as part of that. We just want to test with the writing sample that they are willing to write work and then show it to a stranger. If just being able to do that means that we can work with you the rest of the way. So we had several applicants, and from the pool, 6 of them ended up committing to the project. And in that first part of the project, they basically would meet twice a week for an hour and a half, and they would. Actually, it was an hour. It's going to be an hour and a half next time. That's one of the things we learned, that we need a little more time for the meetings. During one of the sessions each week, I would teach a writing module, which is about the craft of writing. So we'd start very basic with point of view, and we'll discuss point of view and different elements of point of view, different versions of first and second person, techniques employed, that sort of thing. And we'd work our way up to developing characters, character flaws, story structure, and whatnot. So very craft focused at the very beginning. And they would also begin hearing from our first few guests. We had Dawn and Stephen Graham Jones at the beginning there. And all of our guest authors were able to, I just let them teach a topic that they wanted to. I left that completely up to them. I was like, what would you like to teach these students? So they all picked topics either in their genre or talked about something that they had learned personally on their own paths to publication. Stephen Graham Jones did a module on opening lines and breaking down the different techniques in opening lines and how to hook readers. And it was really cool to be able to hear that myself too. So that's sort of did the first part of it. And during that, I kind of gave them about 2 weeks to just hear from guest authors, hear about the modules. And then I really started encouraging them okay, what's your idea for your story, guys? Because we're gonna have to get writing if we're gonna make it by the end there. So after about 2 weeks, I had them all starting to write something. So they're beginning their first drafts. We continue with the writing modules, hearing from more guests. And then leading into the second part of the project, their first drafts are due. They send them to all of their peers as well as myself. This is when I do the first round of developmental edits. So I go through their work. I am mostly focusing on sort of big picture things, the structure of the plot. Does this make sense? Do the characters make sense? Do we need to rewrite anything? That sort of stuff. The really heavy-handed, like, oh, you have to start again kind of work happens at the beginning. And their peers are doing the same. So everybody read and critiqued everybody else's work, at least in that developmental stage during this project, which was really important. That's part of the reason they got the stipend too, because they're not only writers, they're also all editors for their peers. And we do an Iowa style workshop, which we go around the virtual table. We did 2 students each session. So everybody got about a half hour of direct attention on their piece. Actually, those sessions were an hour and a half. So 45 minutes of direct attention on their piece. The author has to remain silent in an Iowa style workshop while everybody I time them 2.5 minutes to just talk about their piece, say what they saw in it, ask questions that you cannot answer just yet. And it goes around the table. Everybody gets the same amount of time. I talk at the end about what I saw during my edits and whatnot. And then the author gets a chance to speak and answer and comment on what they have just heard. And then it goes into general discussion. And that part is really fruitful. That's sort of the part where we work through a lot of plot holes, come up with new ideas together. Somebody will say something that just like, oh my gosh, actually, what about this? And the author will be like, I love that. Or like, actually, that's made me think of this. So a ton of the big structural changes just come from that like wonderful, supportive, collaborative environment there during that workshop. And everybody got their turn for that. So that is kind of the second phase, was just those intense workshops and the developmental edits. Now, all of these students have edits from myself and a round of edits from all of their peers. Everybody had to mark up everything. So we talked about it, but they also have a hard copy with like comments, editing, lines, all that stuff in there. So they have to process this over the next section of the workshop. During the next phase, I'm still teaching modules, but the modules are moving more into editing. We're talking about what to look for in editing, like craft elements and different styles and techniques to implement, talking about the professional editorial process, what you would expect when you are getting published and that sort of thing, really giving them the tools they need to self-edit and edit their peers and process all of the information that they just received. And they are doing their edits. They're for their first round of real big edits and sometimes rewrites. I had a couple students who had to rewrite like 60 or 70% of their work. I'm like, this story was really cool. Like the good news is, the story is really cool. I really like your characters. Bad news is, your story starts on page 12, which means the first 12 pages gotta go. And they all buckled down and did it. Like I am endlessly impressed every time I do a project like this with the dedication and tenacity of my students. Hearing something like that or like a total rewrite is like really hard news. And when I have a student that just is like, all right, starting on page 1 again, I know that's the most important thing to making it in the world of writing, is just being able to do that. And they always throw me. So we're doing all the editorial work here, more editorial workshops. They're still hearing from guest authors at this stage. We have more guest authors coming in. And after that stage wraps up, we move into the third stage of the process here. The third stage of the process, I kind of pass the students off for the module sessions to Rashaa. This is when she and Alyssa are preparing them about teaching. So they have more background in teaching and presenting programming. So they're helping them come up with ideas for the workshop they want to run from the public and preparing them to do that. During this phase, I am editing with them individually. So they have sent me their rewrites. I go through, mark it up again. I'm looking more at line things right here. Sentence structure, style, paragraph placement, making sure scenes are in the right spot, stuff like that. And we're passing the drafts back and forth on a kind of very tight and individual deadlines. At some points, I'd be like, okay, thank you for your second draft. I've gone through it. I've marked it all up, done more edits, give it back to them, get this back to me in 5 days, that sort of thing, which very closely mirrors the actual professional editorial process. So we go through all that and we make our way all the way to the copy edits. And then we're talking about together collaborating with the cover artist. We have the cover artist in as a guest at this point. So all the students, I took a very hands-off approach to that. The students picked the title themselves. They talked with the cover artist and together they collaborated on what they wanted that cover to be. And it came out fantastic. And I really love that it represents a little piece of each of their stories. So that was all them. That was all them. They're very brilliant. And the copy edits are done at this point, and I am fading even more into the background as I dive deep into the formatting process of preparing these files and getting them into Ingram Spark in a way that will work and make books that print correctly, which is a lot. And that is fortunately something that I don't have to take up students' time with, so they can focus more on preparing their workshops. Toward this stage, we also had our final guest in, not an author, but a literary agent, Carlisle Weber, who talked to them about contracts. And the final modules were about marketing, publishing, genre, contracts, the real business side of that. So that was really valuable to them, especially considering some of our students are in their 20s, they're finishing grad school, and they're going to be submitting their work for publication all over, whether it's academic writing or it's creative writing, and having the chance to go through with a professional literary agent, warn them about different clauses and language and things to expect is really valuable in preparing them to not be taken advantage of in like a sometimes predatory market. And we went through our own contract there at that point too. So, and then the final phase was them presenting their workshops. Rashaa will talk a little bit more about what it took there and what they did. But that pretty much concluded it. They ran their workshops. We did a book launch and author reading online to celebrate their work and promote it coming out. And then the print copies were running and the e-copies were hosted and the students were paid.
That's fantastic. You know, so for those people that haven't seen the cover, so Angel Beth Smith, Narragansett was the artist that did the cover illustration. And there were, is it 6 students that participated, which I believe they were from various tribal nations. This is one of those, when we talk about the positive things that come out of COVID, it's that this was a virtual program. So the West Warwick Public Library could have people from all over the place. So we have Abi Bentium, who's from White Earth, Ojibwe descendant, Madeline Hutchins, Mohegan, Leah Olson, White Earth Nation descendant, Gola Yona, Cherokee, Vian Keen, Black and Menominee descent, and Rachel Gruner, who's Narragansett. And so we were very excited to be at least ended up with at least 1 Narragansett and 2 local tribal folks, but it's really exciting that there was all this participation of these different Indigenous youth, young adults. I'm wondering, in this anthology, if you could speak to what genres are represented by the different authors. We'll start there and then maybe follow up with if you have any favorite passages you want to share from the book.
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. So it's a multi-genre anthology, just like our previous one. When we run these projects, we really don't want to limit the kind of story any of our writers can tell. One of the points of these projects is to show that any person can tell any kind of story. So we have all kinds of genres in here. We have a lot of horror and kind of dark fantasy. There's a psychological horror in there. We have a collection of poetry by Abi Bentium, which we organized in a really nice way where a couple of her poems sort of introduce each piece. We have a fable, which is almost like a middle grade fable. It's something that you could read to children, and it's really beautiful when it's read out loud. In particular, it has a very narrative feel to it. There's science fiction, kind of a dark horror science fiction in there, which is super fun. We have a psychological thriller. And I'm trying to think if I am missing anyone. That's pretty much it. So it actually landed more on the dark side. There's some horror, psychological thriller, dark science fiction, and then we have the fable, which is kind of in the middle. All the students decided they wanted it to almost be like a rest piece or an intermission, and then we get back into the dark stuff again. Oh, and there's an urban fantasy that is really fun. Lots of magic and an art gallery. So it's a really fun piece. There's a little bit of something in there for everyone. So even if some of the genres are not to your taste, it's a short story and it's a chance to try something new, try several things new. And it's really fun in that way.
Thank you. Do either one of you want to share a favorite passage? I know I picked a passage. I have not read the whole book, but I did pick one of the poems that caught my attention.
Yeah, I particularly liked one of the poems a lot, and I had the honor of helping with editing the poetry, as I write poetry. So that was the part I could help on in the editing portion. So my favorite one was Tripping or Falling, which is by Abby Bentium. So I'll start that one off. Tripping or falling. Cerulean glances in abundance, adrift from where you started. You close your eyes and melt away. Only the zephyr, a familiar presence. Your hands grace the overlong greenery. It beckons for you to draw nearer. The chance comes and goes quickly. Imprinting yourself on the sod below, you run. Thousands of wisps seek connection, a memory that loses display. Your body reflects the unsteadiness inside of you. Falling, down, 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 dark. When you trip, do you stumble or fall? Does it take a few steps to regain? Do you let go of sight completely? Are you going to reach or be the one that cuts the rope?
I love Abby's poem so much. I'm so glad we had a poet for this anthology.
Yes.
I've selected a short passage from Madeline Hutchins' piece at the Tower. This piece in particular really resonated with me. It's the psychological horror that I mentioned, but it's really subtle in some things and really loud in others. And the juxtaposition of how quiet and loud it is at the same time is really, really powerful. So I picked a short passage to read for you. It's one of my favorites. Hello, may I come in? Lenore asks aloud, heaving the door open. Shafts of light penetrate the darkness through the small semicircular windows cut in the small space where the ceiling of the crypt exceeds ground level. It is cold, but not unpleasantly so. The smell of the earthen floor soothes her. She takes off her shoes to feel the earth press against the soles of her feet. As the adrenaline from her flight dissipates, the exhaustion from months of stress and disrupted sleep settles into her bones. Her body is so heavy, leaden, and she sinks to lie flat on the ground. It is smooth, not like in her dreams. She strokes the earth beneath her, leaving shallow indentations. She closes her eyes. From the darkness, the verdant landscape of her dream at home weaves together. The lush and enticing path beside the river unfurls before her like a spring fern. Standing there, Lenore breathes freely for the first time in months, feeling the grass growing between her toes. The sense of promise is almost seductive. Light glints off the river. She lingers over the mosses growing at the base of the trees. Enshrined in such abundant beauty, she feels her own roots reaching as deep into the earth as the trees. The sound of her own voice startles her back to the bowels of Bridgman. Why am I here? From the corner of her eye, she catches flashes of motion. Not off-white, not bones, flesh. The leather of deerskin moccasins, the diamond on a skirt hem, the two native students in her class, or from that long-gone class. She sits up and tries to face them, but they remain out of view. Stop moving. Listen. When Lenore stills herself, they appear in her periphery. Their voices echo through the crypt around her. They do not want us here. They might try to say they do, but we aren't of use to them as a whole, only as parts, and parts do not live long without the whole.
This speaks to the depth of this book and the kinds of things that the authors could evoke, the emotions and the passion, if you will, for the written word, but also for things in our lives. We're living in a really weird time, and unfortunately for our own community, I know of 3 funerals this week, and so for some reason, the poem "My Condolences" jumped out to me. But I get that it's not literally about death, but about loss and love. And but let me read it to you. You can internalize it yourself. My condolences. This one was by Abby Bentium as well, from White Earth Nation. If I die tomorrow, tell my mother not to blame herself. Tell her that her unconditional kindness made me want to be a better person. Tell her that she wasn't lucky to be my mother. I was lucky to be her daughter. If I die tomorrow, tell my father not to shut people out. Tell him that he taught me patience, and that sometimes the only person that you can control is yourself. Tell him that I wouldn't have been as strong without knowing that he had my back. If I die tomorrow, tell my brother it'll be okay. Tell him that it is all right to not know what to do because I wouldn't know what to do if I lost him either. Tell him that I was more proud of him than any of my own accomplishments. If I die tomorrow, tell my friends to smile again. Tell them that I'd still want them to tease me and joke about my mistakes. Tell them thank you for the space they created where I could be my true self. If I die tomorrow, don't let my dreams go with me. Take and share them with as many people as you can. Live on knowing that my soul is content with my story being spread if I die tomorrow. Very powerful poem.
Abby is also one of the youngest writers in this anthology too. So plenty more big things I'm expecting in her future.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting. So I'm wondering, given our conversations, that poem that I just read speaks to lots of things. It can speak to the pandemic. It can speak to, the love and the loss that we're having over this last 2 years. It can speak to suicide. It can speak to, unspeakable death for a myriad of reasons. So given all the conversations that we're having today around these really big topical issues around the pandemic, around missing and murdered Indigenous women, about Indigenous invisibility or uplifting diverse voices, decolonizing, how did this program that you did speak to these pressing issues?
Certainly, it definitely speaks to uplifting Indigenous voices, which, as I said, was a goal of mine for the collection here in the youth department. And I think that definitely speaks to that. And it also, with us uplifting these voices, the students themselves, these authors, have been able to tackle these subjects as well. And so when people are reading these stories, these poems, they are engaging with their own experience, that the author's experiences and narratives, and learning something from it. And so in that way, we certainly hope to educate and as a library, that's one of our goals, but we also are looking to just expand culturally for people to be seen, to be heard, and also to have people who might not know to see and hear others as well. And it's certainly, here at the West Warwick Public Library, we very seriously take equity and diversity and inclusion and justice in every facet of what we do here at the library. So we're always looking at different ways and different things that we could be doing to help raise up diverse voices. And this was only just one piece of that for us. But I think, because we see, Amber and I have discussed that this has kind of grown into a publishing house for us here at the library. And we are seeing this not only as, not only do we purchase the Own Voices books, but we are now taking a hand in creating them and giving access to people who might not be able to traditionally get published due to a lot of the gatekeeping that happens in traditional publishing. So we are hoping that this can be kind of an opening for people to get these things on their resume and move on to bigger and better things that that we can open those doors. So that's really, I think, for me, and I mean, I think Amber as well, we've discussed this, but I don't want to speak for you, but certainly I think that's one of the most rewarding things I think that come of these kinds of projects that we're doing. And we're certainly going to continue on doing this type of work. And we have an LGBTQIA anthology that's going to be coming out in June. And if all goes well, and then we are hoping to get funding for a Middle Eastern and North African voices anthology as well. So we're just going to keep expanding upon what we're doing and just give an opportunity to those who have been previously pushed out of this world.
Thank you. That was really powerful to explain your impact. I mean, you did it so succinctly. And also some of your future goals that you have as well. But I had a thought of a question that, you know, either one of you might want to speak to, but I think Amber alluded to it a little bit early on about some of the changes. So like you've told us, you know, some of the successes in the project, the fact that the book is published and out there is a huge success, right? But I'm wondering, what were the things that you learned along the way that as you've been moving forward, what would be things that you would maybe change? What were challenges, you know, or what was, you know, something you stumbled on? It doesn't have to be a negative thing, but that you realized was something that you should change or add or do differently.
Yeah, every time I do this project, I learn and change things for the next one. So for the first project, we had 2-hour sessions. I learned that that was too long. In this project, I had 1-hour sessions. I learned that that is too short. The next one will be 1.5 hours. So that's like a very, very clear-cut example of something that I learned. But I also learned that the longer timeline is definitely beneficial. The more time I have to do one of these projects, the better. The students definitely benefit from having more time to draft and edit their work. I would have liked even more time than I had here. There were some places where it was really, really tight. So that is something that we'll be looking for in future projects. The grant that we've applied for the next one is a 6-month time period, which gives us 1.5-ish more months than we had here. That will help immensely. Another thing that I learned, actually, we had surveys for the students, exit surveys, and weekly surveys as well. Not all of them did weekly surveys, but all of them had the option to. And I actually received on one of my modules, I was talking about story structure and story arcs. And a lot of what you learn in most high schools comes from white canon. And it involves very like Western centric story shapes. And those are not the only story shapes in the world. And during that module, I had mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs as thinking of a way to think about character motivation. And one of the students had sent me a survey with feedback on that and educated me about how Maslow had stolen the sort of groundwork for his hierarchy of needs from the Blackfeet people. And then she told me about how there was that story structure with the self-actualization at the top is very Western, and the Blackfeet people who had originally sort of made the story shape, the top of the pyramid was like actualization of community, and that this communal way of thinking of growth was something that was out there and something that had been butchered by Maslow. So that was really awesome. I love that I got that feedback, and I love that this is now going to be incorporated into the next series of modules. I've edited that slide. I've linked to her article and cited it, and I now include that story shape structure as something that I'm going to talk about as a way to think about stories. And I really genuinely hope that I get a little piece of at least one, if not more, little pieces of feedback from all of the people that I do this with, because I can just see the program just getting so much richer and better and just more true through just having honest feedback from different people who just know more about some things than I do. So that was sort of like one of the most golden examples of something that I learned in a way that the project has grown from the students.
That's a great example. I'm sure as you do this project with different diverse communities, you're going to find different ways of storytelling and being able to wrap those learning experiences into the presentation style so that it's adapted to reach different life experiences and how they come to the writing work that they're doing. So that's really exciting. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and ask this question, even though you alluded to it, but I want to make sure that you got to tell all your future goals and projects in case there was something that you didn't say when you were talking about it before.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to, we want to keep doing this with different groups. Obviously, I have future goals for doing an anthology with persons with disabilities, with Southeast Asian and Asian voices, Black voices, like as many as you can, as many types of beautiful people are out there in the world. I would love to do a collection that focuses on them and to invest in them the way that they deserve. So that's one goal. I would love to, all of our products are now for sale after our first anthology. They were not, we had just done free copies in all of the libraries, and then the ebook was available for free. There was no way for people to order physical copies. That grant was very, very tiny, and that was kind of the scope we could manage. This grant was much larger. So when we moved forward with a new publishing platform that allowed us greater distribution and the ability to do sales, we moved that other anthology up as well. I would love to get to a place where our platform is large enough that a lot of people are seeing this work and they're leaving reviews. Reviews are so important to writers and their career. A review matters way more than a book sale. It matters more than 10 book sales. So one of the best ways you can support these authors is to leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads of their books. Even a negative review, if you are under 50 reviews, is a positive thing. The number of reviews matters way more than the content of the reviews and the star rating of the reviews. So I cannot stress that enough. Please review the work. So I would love to get to a place where our platform is big enough that we have lots and lots of readers and lots of eyes producing those reviews. So like that, their work can just be seen more. And the more reviews and the more prestigious the work is, the more impact it's going to have on those query letters they're going to be sending out to publish their next piece. And just the more help it will be in their career in general. I would also like them to be making enough sales that we can start leaning less on grants and more on the sales money itself, helping us do the next project. That'll help us become a little more independent and in control of when and what we are able to do with each of the projects. So that is it. That is my big stretch goal, to be generating enough income from the press to be able to guarantee the next project without having to be dependent on a grant. Publishing and the algorithms on there is kind of weird, and the rate at which you turn out books is also something that helps with sales. So at least one book a year is very important to be able to do that in a timely manner. If we can do 2 a year, that's even better. 3 a year, I could not do without more staff, more staff with experience in editorial and publishing and writing. But 2 a year would be amazing, especially if we were self-funded with them and we just know we could do it, and we had the money to do what we want. Having extra money to be able to hire a translator if we needed one or something would be awesome as well. So there's lots of goals for just ways to build the press and make sure that the press is getting more and more attention, and that attention is further accelerating the authors and empowering their career.
That's wonderful. So where can the audience learn more about these projects and how to support them?
So certainly in terms of just everything we have going on at the library, this publishing and press is a small facet of, even though it's a big thing, but it's just a small snippet of all the things that we do at the West Warwick Public Library. So you can go on to our website, which is www.wwpl.org. It's a lot of W's, I know. And then if you would like to look at our publishing efforts, on our website, there is a press page. And so that is just the same website that I just mentioned, /press, and that will take you to our press page that's going to show you the books that we have published, upcoming projects, as well as where to purchase or borrow the books. So if you're not able to purchase the book, it is available in the public libraries for you to borrow. And like Amber said, please review them, because that is the biggest thing for these young authors who are making their way, getting their start in this field. So definitely please do that.
And reviews do not have to be long. You could just leave a star rating if you wanted to. It could be one sentence, like, so cool to see so many Indigenous people from so many places. Like it could be a sentence, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And say again where they should do the review at.
Goodreads and Amazon are the most important places to leave reviews. There are other places you can review books, but those are the ones that turn into the most sales and the most like online buzz and just general reach for the products.
So
Amazon, if you have to pick one, Amazon is more important than Goodreads, but you can copy and paste your same review to each one. So
I'm going to pop the Goodreads in there. I'm assuming Amazon people know how to find.
Yeah.
So
they don't need any advertisement.
right. And so I put that in there as well. So that's a good thing to remember, that it's good to give some kind of feedback. I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to ask before we go to Q&A. If there's anything else you'd like to add before we go to Q&A, I don't know what I just said, but.
Yeah, I would just like to add that, you know, when we did this the first time around with just the teens of all different backgrounds, it was really great to see the collaboration and the friendships that they made, but even more so with this group where they were connecting to one another like on a cultural level as well, and really identifying with one another and their experiences being Indigenous, and the difficulties that they have faced in that, and finding camaraderie within one another. I think it was such a beautiful thing to witness and be a part of. And I definitely think that, you know, these connections are going to be ones that I think that they're going to have for the rest of their lives. And not only are they going to be like editing buddies, but, you know, they've created long-lasting friendships with one another. And to me, like as a librarian, like one of our goals is community connections. And so just seeing all of that take place, you know, it wasn't something that we had, you know, started out with our goals for the grant, you know, to do that, but seeing that be organically fostered was just so rewarding for me.
That is amazing. To think of those, you know, some of these kids that are meeting, they might have lifelong friendships coming from this experience of spending all that time, you know, getting to know each other through the writing, through their critiquing, and through those experiences. And who knows how their lives' paths will cross over again and again. I know we have a few minutes for any audience questions. If they want to pop them in the chat, they may. And there's just a little love being sent in the chat for the program and for our series, Literature and Author Conversations. So I appreciate that. And if there's any questions, you can feel free. I was wondering myself how the library is doing with finding more Native authored children's books. Because, you know, I know we shared with you Oyate as a source to help you in the American Indian Library Association is another great source of books that are getting, you know, feedback and awards and authors and things like that. And very recently, if you're not aware, Chris Newell, who is Passamaquoddy but has lived in Southern New England for quite some time and worked at the Pequot Museum and now works at Agamau Educational Initiative. He's one of the co-founders of that educational initiative. He just wrote a book about Thanksgiving, and it's got a title, something like something to the effect of what you maybe didn't know about the quote unquote first Thanksgiving or something like that. I can get the actual title because I think I'm not giving it justice.
Is that the one that Scholastic put out?
Yes, that's just fairly new. So that's by Chris School.
We have it.
Excellent. So that's good. But that's, kind of keeping up with those is great. As more and more authorship happens here in Southern New England in particular, but all across Indian country.
Yeah.
So there is a question about what was the age range of the participants?
It was 16 to 25.
So that's a pretty wide age range of capacity and experience.
That was also a really cool element of the project too, having just like authors that are still in high school and dealing with high school things, also being able to hear from authors who are in college and being able to share life advice amongst themselves in that way. That was really cool to be able to watch and see that help them and grow.
There's also a note here for the both of you, Amber and Rashaa. Thank you for all that you are doing to support and give a voice to our youth. And it's phenomenal. That's a wonderful opportunity. So I want to thank you both so much as well for sharing tonight about this amazing project. And just to continue to uplift underheard, underserved voices in our communities, and to have these stories be told, and to have, artists be selected from the community for the covers, and for, having authors, to have their first time with their names on the back of a book here, which I think is just really phenomenal. So I thank you both, Amber and Rashaa, for sharing with us today, and thank all of you for joining us for Literature and Culture Author Conversations. I just have a couple of quick announcements that I'd like to share with you. We have some upcoming events. That is the Indigenous Author Book Club, which is tonight on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. So if you're feeling really ambitious, you can flip from this right to that. We also, if you're not aware, have the Away from Home American Indian Boarding School Stories exhibit at URI. It's all the way till January 7th. It's Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, with the exception of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. You can go any of the other days. It's at 95 Upper College Road on the URI campus. And so we're really excited. It's been very well received. If you haven't had an opportunity to go see it, you should. We also are having, as one of our final programs in celebration and in connection with that exhibit, we have a virtual screening of the award-winning documentary Dawnland, with commentary by Indigenous Spears and Chris Newell of Agama Educational Initiative, on Wednesday, January 5th at 6 p.m. So be sure to sign up in our events page as soon as it's posted. I know that they're working on it because it was in our rotator, so we had some kind of piece to do with that today. But you definitely can do that. And I will put our events page and our YouTube page in the chat, because all of these programs are recorded and can be seen in a day or so on our YouTube page. And I'm just gonna thank everybody again for being here this evening. Of course, thank our funders, Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, RICharge, USDA Rural Development, and New England Foundation for the Arts, as well as our generous donors. I would also like to remind everybody, since it's the holiday season and the gift of giving, that Tamaqua Museum has a wonderful museum store where we collaborate with over 35 local Indigenous artists. And you can see those things on our online version of the store, as well as our in-store store. So come on by to Tamaqua Museum or check us out online and support Indigenous artists and support Rhode Island's only Indigenous-led museum. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I hope to see you at Dawnland filming, if not before. Have a great night, everyone. Winnie Nakan and Winnie Nakomo, happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.